Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. This is the Art Migo podcast, and today we have a special guest, Cynthia Halley. She's a good friend of mine, and we met working on the show What If together. She was an art director at the time, and she's been gracious enough to look at my work, and we've gone sketching out in public a few times together, which has been really fun. And yeah, so thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I wanted to ask, just to start out, some questions about how you got your start in the industry and how you got to where you are today. And pretty much the first question is, how were you always an artist, or did you start doing some other path? Like, was it always a very linear path to where you are now, or?
Yes and no. So I have always been an artist, very definitely. Since before I can remember, I was obsessed with drawing and the way things looked, and funny enough, also specifically environments. With just even my toys and stuff, I really loved setting up what environments my toys would be playing in, rather than the toys themselves. Almost, I was more interested in. That said, I did not know that I was going to be in animation, and even entertainment in a funny way was a little bit of a surprise. I actually started out really wanting to be some kind of an illustrator or something like that. When I started watching certain movies, those really influenced me, and I realized I wanted to be able to design the worlds that those movies took place in. But it wasn't until I was in college that I realized that there is actually an entertainment industry that's made for that, where that happens. So it really wasn't until my early 20s that I realized, oh my gosh, like entertainment design is a thing. I can actually do that it is a field. I just sort of thought it was something that people accidentally fell into.
Right.
So I was trying to find my way to accidentally fall into it, and then I actually did fall into it. So
Nice.
Yeah, that happened in college, and then it wasn't until the end of college, so another 2 to 4 years later, that I actually understood that animation was going to be a really great place for me to go.
Awesome. Yeah. The next thing that I was going to ask you about was just people, maybe mentors and other people that have gotten you to where you are today, teachers and whatnot.
Sure. I mean, many of them. I was lucky enough as a kid to be really supported not only by my family, but I had a number of really excellent teachers, and I think that helped me, fostered a healthy relationship for me and teachers. I think a lot of people are just extra intimidated by teachers, or even potentially dislike school or education or anything like that. And I was fortunate enough to have just really positive experiences with that. So the further I went through school, the deeper I got into specifics of education, going from just regular school to private, particular college.
Yeah.
The mentorships and the teachers that had influence for me became more specific as well, and exponentially more influential. I had 2 or 3 teachers at Art Center College of Design in particular who I don't believe any of them are actually still there. Everybody tends to move around a fair amount, but I had 2 or 3 teachers that really, really made a difference, and it was mainly that we understood each other. So something that people always ask me about mentorships and trying to find teachers is that you want to find people who you feel like you actually click with. It's not always just about, oh, I like this person or I love their work.
Yeah.
You really, if you want the depth that real teacher-student relationship can bring, you have to look for the type of people that you feel like really understand you, and that you really understand the way that they teach, and that's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, totally. Did you have any moments when you were in school, or maybe after school, where it was a big breakthrough for you, where you had kind of, I guess, for example, a moment for me was when I took my mentorship with Tiffany Meng in 2021. Is a good painter, also worked with us at Marvel, and that was kind of a moment from that point onwards where I looked at things completely differently art-wise. I don't know if you had any of those epiphany moments.
Yeah, actually, and it was in Will Weston's class, and another one I had in Richard Key's class. Those were the two teachers that I mentioned. I've since had a number of sort of smaller moments that obviously collectively mean something, but the moments that really turned me in a particular direction and solidified things were first in Richard Key's class, where we were studying how to depict an environment, the same environment but different times of day, and what that meant for storytelling. That was huge on me, because it was like, oh my gosh, that's what I realized I wanted to learn, was how to, not only how to do it, not only how to, like, how does the light change, but actually why you would want to do it in different circumstances. And Will's class, Will Weston, he opened my eyes to, as I think he does for most students, a way of thinking about drawing and design that is really, really simplified to the point where it almost feels like cheating. But it's really distilled information, and it's information that you can apply across design. And a lot of that I learned from him, and I still work with him regularly, that's a lot of what I teach now. It was so influential for me to realize that drawing isn't just about putting a line on a page, that it's really about thinking how these objects are shaped, and again, how they combine to make stories as well.
Yeah. Well, it sounded like you were kind of discussing this a little bit, but I wanted to ask a little bit about your favorite part about designing environments. It seemed like you were saying, drawing the same environment, different things is something you liked, but is there a favorite? There doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I mean, I love it in so many different ways. It's a little bit hard to pick a favorite, but what comes to mind, and I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day, I don't actually personally care about story very much. I'm not a writer. I don't care about inventing stories at all. But what I do care about is helping other people to visualize their stories. So I love working with someone, a director, that has a vision. They know what they want. They know what the story needs to be. And I love the challenge of, how do I make that look? How do I make things look in order to tell that story that I don't particularly care about, but I sure as heck care about, making the story visual. So there's that. But just in general, I get a real kick out of arranging things. just setting objects up and making it a pleasing arrangement, I just think is a blast for whatever reason.
So sketching and going out painting, that's something that artists do. That's what I do, and like lots of people in the entertainment industry have, go out and paint from life and do those types of things. I wanted to ask about how you've maintained your passion for going out and sketching at coffee shops. You just showed me before this your coffee sketchbook. When art is your day job, how do you maintain that creative energy to go out and continue to do that?
I actually love this question because I never used to do that. I hated doing that. I always felt like it was something that artists were supposed to do. That, if I'm a real artist, that means that I should be out practicing all the time. And I hated that idea. I just wanted to enjoy life when I wasn't doing art. It's difficult as an artist not to make art our entire identity. And that was always sort of paramount for me, was to make sure that I was having, experiencing life outside of art as well. And so I never enjoyed any kind of, coffee sketching or anything like that. I never went out with friends, nothing. It always just felt like a gross chore. What changed that was when I was working at Marvel. So we worked together for almost 4 years on What If. And as an art director on that show, it was so constantly working, and don't get me wrong, I love art directing. That is a position that I absolutely love. But it's not a lot of art. It is a lot of thinking and organizing and teaching and directing. And on that particular show, it was so draining, and I realized for me, I wasn't learning artistically, and that was the biggest trouble that I was having, and I felt really sort of suppressed or just sad.
Yeah.
that I realized that learning was the biggest thing that I always wanted to be doing with art no matter what. There's always something that I want to learn how to do better. And so for the first time, prior to this moment, keep in mind, prior to art direction, every show that I was on, every class that I was in, the point was to learn. So when you're an art director, the point becomes to teach others.
Right.
So this was a real transition for me where I realized, well, wait a minute, okay, I'm learning how to teach, that's great. And I'm learning about politics and management, but I wasn't learning art, and I really missed that. So it occurred to me one day, and I was like, you know what, I could actually just find some things that I want to learn. And I was looking at a friend's sketchbook, and I thought, I really like what she did with those lines. I wonder if I could do that. Like, can I figure out how to do that? And so I went home and I was trying to figure out how to do it. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I need to do. This is the thing that everybody else has always done that I've always hated that now I really want to do. Mm-hmm. So it became actually, at work, I was not being creatively fulfilled. I was not learning. So I started sketching as a way to do that. And I think that was the difference, that I was able to always learn wherever I was, and other people were just continuing that side out of their work, outside of their work. And for me, it was, no, I'm good. Like, I learned enough at work today. I'm tired. I want a break, so I never did it. But when it got to the point that I realized I wasn't getting creative fulfillment, that's when I started really enjoying it. Yeah. So I think to go back and actually answer your original question, I think it partly just depends on the person, and it takes sort of awareness of where you are in your own process and your own learning development. So like for me, I was having a few months now where I just barely drew at all. I was just busy and tired, and I was okay with that. So not putting pressure on myself to do the thing. And I think that's really, really, really key. So now, if anybody follows me, they'll see I'm always, posting stuff on Instagram, but I'm not always posting stuff on Instagram, and I'm not always drawing those things, and I never do them for other people. Yeah. So I'm always making sure that what I'm doing is because I feel like doing it, because I want to do it, because I want to learn it, practice it, whatever. I'm inspired by something. I won't do it if I don't feel those things, because you'll see it in the art, and it's gross. And
yeah. No, I struggle with that too, of like, since I post a lot on social media, and most of my work gets posted on Instagram nowadays, it's that's like something I've been dealing with lately, because I think about feeding the beast when I'm posting and like making sure that people, like an audience, is gonna like this. And then I have to stop when I get into those zones, especially if I'm painting a lot frequently, because I catch myself being like, with an audience,
it's hard not to let it take over.
Yeah, and then it doesn't become for me, and then I'm not learning anymore, and that's when I have to stop. So I totally get that.
And also, I also just want to say for people out there who love, like creating that stuff for other people, that's not to say that that's a bad thing. Like if that's what you enjoy about it, then by all means, that's what you should be doing.
Totally.
It's all about just what brings you that fulfillment.
Yeah, it's a balance too, because I do enjoy sharing my work with like an Instagram audience, but I also really value feeling like I'm improving. Yeah. So I just have to juggle those two things at the same time. But
I think everybody does.
Transitioning a little bit from that into a different topic of the state of the industry at the moment. So with the state of things in the industry, it's been really tough lately for greener artists to kind of get their foot in the door. For example, I've been seeing a lot of looking for work posts on Instagram from like artists who are vets, like with 10 plus years of experience in the industry. And, a lot of people can get pretty discouraged seeing that. So I just wanted to ask, do you have any words of advice for people who might be feeling discouraged by seeing all of that?
I do, yeah. One thing you actually already mentioned it, that especially for people who are green to the industry, who are coming in new or fresh, don't have that much experience, it is really important to realize that everybody's struggling right now, that it is remarkably rough. It is unusually rough right now. And the other thing that I would say is that every industry has ebb and flow. Every industry goes through seasons of plenty and barren deserts. So, some industries may seem absolutely untouchable, that this never changes, but you'd be surprised that even within, the most mainstream successful industries, you'll have currents in there where people are struggling to find one thing or another. And I think with animation in particular, entertainment in general, it follows so much the flow of the rest of the world around us. So in a big way, entertainment is influenced by current events, and that could be the economy, that could be conflict. There's any number of things that will influence what people want to produce, what people are able to produce as artists, what producers are looking for to be produced, what studios are willing to produce. So I think the big thing is just don't take it personally.
Yeah.
That you really have to think of everything as just part of a larger machine. It's a pendulum that swings back and forth. Two thoughts on that as well. I, for one, believe that things will always kind of come back. Basically, no matter how bad they get, there will be an opposite to that at some point. That things will rise.
Yeah.
Things will likely never be exactly the same as they were, but that's inevitable as well. That's change. And the other side of that is that you have to choose to be positive about it if you want to survive.
Yeah.
Because there will be people who are bitter and negative, and they may survive just out of sheer
Yeah. Just great. Just like so angry.
But I think those people are rare, and I think for the most part, any job, not just animation, that if you want to get through it and you want to build a career, you really have to be willing to decide that things will get better. You do the best you can. You prepare for the worst, so that if when things don't get better for a while, you have your setup.
Yeah. A big part of why I wanted to ask that question, I mean, a lot of the people who are submitting to ArtMigo are kind of greener and trying to get their foot in the door. And also, I went back to my college recently to go to a panel, and it was just totally different environment from when I was there, of just like the attitude that students had. Everyone was so aware of like the state of things and how difficult it is.
Yeah.
And they're in, paying this like big tuition for a degree in, a field where there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I could feel that in the air, and I was like, oh, geez, man, things have changed. On the more hopeful, optimistic side of things, in what degree can somebody have control over things, in terms of, how should somebody be networking themselves effectively? I know, for example, with myself, that I find myself needing to do a better job at networking because, I find myself being shy about asking people to, look at my work, or, if they know of any projects that are out there. I think this comes from some fear of being perceived negatively for doing so. So how would someone communicate with people in the online community who don't necessarily know people personally? Like,
Right.
I feel fortunate because I know a lot of people from working on shows that I can talk to and reach out to, but a lot of people out there don't have any connections. They live in different countries where the industry is not here.
Yeah.
So how would they go about networking?
That's honestly really tough to answer, and part of it is I think the industry doesn't even really know a solid answer to that yet, because this is new. This is a new thing to our industry, and people that are just coming into the industry now, what they need to understand is that for the entire existence of this industry has been in person, has only been networking. The internet wasn't even around for most of it.
Yeah.
So it's like things have just changed so much overnight. So one thing to keep in mind is that everybody's trying to figure this out, and it's not just new people. It's it's veterans as well. We're all trying to figure out how do we make the connections and keep the connections that we need. So again, try not to take the difficulties of that too personally.
Yeah.
But in terms of improving that or making effort, I think a lot of people are already aware of a number of the options, and I think you just have to have the determination and resilience to really pursue those things. So community discords and things like that are great, but what you really need to be doing is reaching up, not just reaching out. So reaching outward, reaching sideways to your peers, to other folks that are about your level, that you're interested in communicating with, that's great, because that's going to build you support and make friends. That's equally as important. But if you want jobs, you need to be reaching up. You need to be finding the people who are either a lot or even just a little bit better than you are, and not just as an artist, but professionally. See where they are. Do they have a job? Have they had an internship? Talk to absolutely everyone that you can. And I think it's important when reaching out, especially online, because a lot of this we can't do in person anymore, is to just be frank, be polite, and be frank, and not try to beat around the bush, and not try to don't overly flatter. Like I receive a lot of emails, through LinkedIn or whatever, and it's folks who, regardless of talent or experience level, they're saying, hey, oh my gosh, I love Marvel, and they go on for a whole paragraph about how they love Marvel. I don't care. Mm-hmm. I really don't. Yeah. And nobody does. There are very few companies out there that are so incestuous that they want you to love their company. Yeah. They appreciate that you know the company, that you're aware of what they do. That's important. But what's much more important is that you give a sense of yourself and just get to the point of, hey, I saw your talk. I really appreciated what you said about this. I was wondering, could you, take a look at my portfolio, or would you have any advice for this one question? Keep it brief, keep it simple, keep it straightforward, and don't try to sort of pull the wool over anybody's eyes about how great you think their stuff. It's just like everybody sees through that. Yeah. So just say what you want and be polite and friendly about it, and that goes for in-person networking too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Transitioning again away from talking about the state of affairs, just portfolio advice in general. What advice would you give to people who want to improve their environment design skills specifically?
Environment design skills specifically? Take my class.
I did say, the second part of this question that I didn't read was, aside from taking your awesome class at Drawing America, are there any exercises that you did that really made a big impact on you? Or how does someone build up their chops as a draftsman?
Yeah. Those are two different questions.
So maybe you can break those.
Yeah. How does one practice or get better at being an environment artist? Observation is a huge thing. So I don't just mean, sit down and figure out how to draw a cup. I mean, step back and look at, how do I feel in this space? What about this space makes me feel that way? And start internalizing that. So for example, if I walk into, two different people's living rooms, one of them is going to make me potentially feel very at ease, very comfortable, very homey. The other might make me feel, sort of formal and a little bit, depending on your background, it may make you more comfortable or less comfortable. But what are the things that signify that? Is it how the furniture is arranged? Is it the colors on the walls? Are there posters on the walls? Are there shelves full of personalized items, or is it all sort of generic? These are all things that you can observe around you in your daily life, and just make note of them mentally, and that's going to go a long way toward helping you build out believable and immersive environments. As far as practicing, like actually putting that into practice, I think learning perspective is a really nice thing to do. Yeah. I basically tell that to everyone, that just please learn perspective.
Yes.
It can be really tough to learn perspective, so I would say even just focusing on the basics is fine. Will get you somewhere. I don't advise turning to 3D. Okay. So if you're trying to learn designing environments, make sure that you understand the basics first. Understand how to draw a space, at least, if nothing else in a limited sense,
Yeah.
get your head around that before you turn to 3D, because otherwise 3D will only and forever be a crutch.
Right.
And you'll never really have the tools that you need to survive as an artist, especially now with AI and everything else. They can generate that in a heartbeat. So you being able to understand what actually makes that space work the way it does is absolutely imperative.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I turned to 3D recently, and I thought about that too, of just making sure that I have that design. I'm thinking about design as I'm using 3D and not using 3D to get me a design.
Which, by the way, just to add one more thing on top of that, is really difficult even for like veteran professional artists to do, is to take 3D or an existing 3D design and design on top of it. There are very few 3D artists who really excel at designing in 3D and not just constructing things.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Again, portfolio-wise, a hypothetical question: if we've got, I don't know if you've ever been like reviewing people who have been submitting to like hire an artist onto a team, but if we've got a pile of very talented artists' portfolios in front of you, is there something that consistently makes somebody a better candidate for the job than somebody else if you have lots of qualified people on the table?
So it does depend on exactly the job, but in general, for me, what I look for is your thinking process. So in addition to, I'd like to see nice finished designs. Obviously, you need to be able to finish something to, work on a production that finishes things. But what I really look for is evidence of how you think and how you solve problems, and that comes usually through the form of sketching. And also, through your sketching, I can tell how proficient of a designer you are. I can tell what types of lines you're comfortable making. I can tell what types of forms you're comfortable working with. I can tell if you understand silhouette, even just from loose sketches. So that stuff is important to include in your portfolio. If you're someone that struggles with the loose sketches and you feel like, God, my finished designs are great, but my initial sketches are not so good, then work backwards. If you finished a design and it's great, make a loose sketch that came from that, rather than, if your initial stuff you just don't like, then don't use it.
Yeah.
Make something else. No one will ever know. I mean,
fair.
Obviously if they hire you and they see you like initially sketching and they don't like the initial sketches, that's different.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of fake it till you make it in that, that if you have finished designs that you love and you can work backward and make good sketches, you'll also see that connection, which will improve your sketches to begin with the next time.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a little bit about what other non-art things are important to you, and what a regular week in the life of Cynthia Halley looks like, and, how that rounds your life out, as an artist with your other things.
Yeah, absolutely. It is embarrassingly difficult to think of what I do outside of work because I work a lot right now.
Yeah. Seasons.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's not always like this. I really love cross-disciplinary study, and that's something that I advocate across the board, that whatever you can possibly get yourself interested in, do it.
Yeah.
All of it will inform you as an artist. So the average week probably isn't going to be very exciting, but in a couple of months at a time or in a year at a time, I'm doing wildly different things all the time.
Yeah.
I'm interested in rock climbing. I'm interested in cars. I love quilting. Like, you wouldn't necessarily put all of those things together, but the more that you can encourage your own curiosity and interest in other fields, the better. And for me, that comes from, again, having a supportive family, but also just curiosity.
Yeah.
I love learning, and I love experiencing things. And the older I get and the more experience I have, the more I realize how much that feeds back into my art. And a lot of people will think of that in a fine art sense, like, oh, I now have this experience that I can express. Well, there's that, but there's also just, now I know what something looks like.
Yeah.
I've been to Paris. I know what Paris looks like. I took photos of Paris myself. It's very different than just seeing photos online. So, I love travel. I travel whenever I can. I love teaching, so anything that I can teach. My own drawing and things that I do, but just a lot of really random, personal projects and interests that, I never intended to develop to sell or anything like that. Costumes at Halloween or for the Renaissance Fair. It's like a lot of it, most of it, ultimately finds its way back to design in some sense. That I'm like, look at the architecture of Paris, or look at the design of that car. Yeah. It almost always relates to that for me somehow. But in general, I really try to just be as varied as I can, and obviously staying physically active when possible. Yeah, when not stuck to my chair for work.
Yeah, totally, super important for people working in the industry right now. Also, curiosity. So many people who I really, really admire as an artist are like so curious and about different things that are totally irrelevant to, or seemingly so, totally irrelevant to like painting and concept art. But just maintaining that curiosity, it's like once it's gone, it's like you've died almost. But so
and it's a muscle too. It's just like creativity. When I was at Marvel, I felt that muscle atrophying, and building it up was really difficult. It was actually kind of painful, just like going to the gym is.
And then the coffee sketching revitalized. Yeah. Now we're gonna go to some audience questions.
Oh, sure.
So I had a few people submit some questions they wanted to ask that were very good. So Brian asks, how do animators or just artists with a range of different art styles collaborate on a singular visually cohesive project?
That's my job.
There you go. Perfect person to ask.
That is the job of an art director. Yeah. So if you have a bunch of artists who have different skill sets and slightly different styles, you will generally be hired on your ability to do something that, the art director basically is experienced enough that they can see these people of differing abilities or different leaning in different directions will come together well in a finished product. If you're talking about your own personal project, then you are the art director. Yeah. And you basically have to pull in your friends or your other artists or whatever and look at what they're doing and say, does this awake something in me? Is this something exciting? Does it make me feel like what I want this thing to look like? And also just personalities. I mean, that's kind of a given, but it's always worth stating that, work with people you like. And sometimes friendships will be strained. Generally put the friendships ahead of the work and just say, this is a person. Yeah. And, we care about that a little bit more than just art that we can make anytime. So, yeah.
Okay. And another question from I Draw NYC asks, what is one thing that surprised you when you got your first job in animation?
Ooh, good question. I've never been asked that before.
Oh, cool.
One thing that surprised me, how unexciting the environment was.
It kind of surprised me too.
Yeah, so the people are great, and it's different now again with working from home so much, but
that was for me.
But even if you take studio tours or something, you really only get the facade. You don't really get to go into where the artists are, and it's cubicles and desks and usually gray walls. Yeah. Sometimes, there are a couple of studios I've worked at that really kind of went out of their way to make, interesting, exciting spaces. But even then, it's still just, it's a work environment, and it kind of has to be, because if it's too fun, nobody gets anything done.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know why my perception of things when I came into the industry was like, oh, animation is gonna be like there's gonna be beanbags.
It's gonna be it's gonna be a chill party every day. Exactly. No, we all go to work every day.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Enjoy each other's company, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then we have a few questions from Dan. Dan went crazy here. We have so the first one is, who are some artists you admire and why?
Oh gosh, there are so many. Are we talking alive? or not?
Oh, no, you can, dead or alive, all good.
Dead or alive, all right. I have a few names that instantly pop into my head that I always love, just kind of no matter what across the board.
Yeah.
Leyendecker, Norman Rockwell, N.C. Wyeth, Aubrey Beardsley. God, so many. I tend to forget the names of like all of the really classic painters, but I love all of them too.
Yeah.
They don't come to my head easily.
John Singer Sargent.
Yeah, there we go.
He's always there.
Who else? People that are going to be more current would be Marcos Mateo. Another one is Mike Mignola.
Okay.
I love his work, and he was someone that I studied specifically for working on Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that's where I fell in love with inking and black mass. I just thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people, even just working in the industry, that are spectacular. Nathan Fowkes is another one.
Yeah, of course.
There's people our age that I'm just like, what? It's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's too many to list, but those are some initial thoughts, and I always mention them in my classes too. So.
Yeah, very cool. And then maybe to wrap things up is Dan's last question here is, what's a fond memory you have doing art? Something that sticks out.
A fond memory
School,
doing art.
work, anything come to mind?
So the first thing that comes to mind, I'm going to give a shout out to my good friend and former classmate, Tenny Isakanyan. I remember very distinctly a very late night working session that she and I had where we were the last two in the classroom. It was probably 1 a.m. at this point at Art Center. And, we're desperately trying to keep ourselves awake and still going. We're working on our separate projects. So we put on Disney musical soundtracks.
Oh, yeah.
And we're, blasting them and singing every word that we could remember. And it's just like that has so stuck in my head as a perfect example of like, friends are really important because they get you through everything.
The tough times.
They get you through just staying awake at night. They get you through, having a really rough time, whatever it is. So yeah, that's always something that sticks in my memory as something that I'd like to continue and experience again.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure, and yeah, I will be seeing you around.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Alex.
All right. Hi everyone, my name's Alex Gordillo and I'm the founder of ArtMigo. At ArtMigo, we provide a valuable resource that's hard to find. Feedback and critique for your work given by working professionals. ArtMigo's the first of its kind, and here's why. Getting feedback from working professionals is a challenge. That's because most of these people are in fact working. With a designated panel of artists available to give you critique, feedback for your work becomes more accessible and more affordable. With ArtMigo, you can have access to invaluable feedback, make a connection with a professional artist, and get their eyes on your work anytime without the commitment of a class or a mentorship. I'm so excited to be sharing this resource with you all today, and I wish you all the best on your artistic journeys.